Career diplomat and former permanent secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joel Keshi, advised President Bola Tinubu to always carefully choose his trips abroad, specifically, and also to be specified on his goal. He said the president needs to invest more in foreign missions and appoint the right persons as ambassadors who can help achieve the various bilateral agreements signed in his many travels. Let's bring this home as we discuss this issue further, being joined by Dr. Sam Amadi, the Director of Abuja School of Social and Political Thought and Rise Analyst. Thank you for your time always on the news night. Yeah, the president just wrapped up, historic, what you could describe as historic visit to France, being his first official visit since taking office. So how significant does these visit hold for bilateral relations between the two countries?
Well, I think the significance will lie in many unknowns. For example, unknown around the French government. France is getting beaten up in part of West Africa, particularly what's going on in Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso. So some of the rumor is France looking for another staging posts, and does it find Nigeria under the current leadership a very good place to do that? That's part of the unknown. Again, the president is fond of France. I mean, he spends his holidays in France. He goes there frequently for medical treatment, and now goes for working visits. So for him, it could be going back home of a sort. Again, he saw the ubiquitous presence of Mr. Gilbert Chaguri looming in this discussion. So the other unknown is what role he's playing. I mean, but in terms of real strategic national interests, policy issues, and like Ambassador Keshi said, my experience, having worked as special advisor in foreign affairs minister, is that what you get is equal to what you prepare to get. So pre the visit and post the visit. Now, the strategic planning for the visit would have identified why we're going to France, what are the key things we want to take out, and what has been the previous engagements, and what are the gaps, what are the unfinished business. So you want to go and wrap up that deal. Again, presidents are not persons who go looking for investors. So this idea that presidents shop for investors is really weird. That's not what they do. They're not run companies. Presidents go to open up space for investors to match at the private sector level. So sometimes they go with CEOs, but they kind of fronting them in, depending on the clout they have. And so I think there should be something more strategic to cash out from this relationship. Apart from the nice cultural optics, we saw Nigerian P Squares music being played by a French band, interesting, very nice evening.
Perhaps a way to connect,
I mean, it makes sense. I love that,
right.
cultural display by France. And it looks like chummy with the president and his wife and our own president. But again, I think we are traveling a lot. And I think we are over-investing in presidential visits. I accompanied Yaradua to State House when Chief Ojomoriko was Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I was part of that team. And the president of Nigeria went there, so this is the happiest of my life. And that was front page on this day. We didn't get much out of that. So this is the point. If you want to do industrial diplomacy, that we as a country that's looking for investors, that seems to be what government is talking about. Everybody talking about investor. Governor Mba talked about AFD. I mean, AFD is a financial ID, International Development Agency for the French government. But again, it's not a big deal. Their portfolio investment is not that big. Again, without going there, these are project-based. If you develop the projects, bankability, get the officials, talk to the officials, it can be wrapped up. So the point is, what we're going to get from this meeting, maybe what we could get with a medium-level engagement at the level of strategic ministries, at the level of processes that we can establish contact and create value. The Lumelus could still get to open their Zenith Bank and UBA Bank branches in France without the president being there. I mean, JP Morgan is the biggest bank in the world. No American parent goes there. So for me, it's slightly underwhelming. The outcome from experience may not justify not just the financial investment, the executive power, but the inordinate focus of government that our success lies in so-called foreign investment.
Perhaps this, your last statement, agrees with the position of opposition parties who have faulted, the president's visit to abroad, saying he's more interested in globe-trotting. I mean, and wasting taxpayers. But let me ask you: do you think the president needs to perhaps measure his trips abroad? That is one. And then in terms of trying to position as a key alliance or partner, with France, how do you think the government, should leverage on that? Should they be cautious? Because now that we know that France is beginning to lose its influence in some other sub-Saharan, especially the Francophone countries, should Nigeria leverage on that loophole, to position itself in order to, to become influential more in the region? I need to react to this before.
Yeah, I think it's actually two-edged. First is that it might be competitive advantage in international politics and in foreign policy. The nature of the game is competitive advantage. So if France is losing, obviously very unpopular in West Africa among the Francophone countries because of a history of exploitation without adding much value.
Because the question is, why is France seeking partnership, with an English country like Nigeria?
Yeah, France would like the opportunity, especially with a president that seemed to be more French in terms of, linkages and relationship and feelings, okay? It helps France to find, Nigeria is big, forget it's blundering in many ways, but Nigeria is big. So a Nigerian working with France could kind of, mitigate the disaster they are facing in the Francophone country. But the reverse is that it might further alienate us from our very key neighbors. So the question then, what are you selling? What are you trading off? So if going with France would make France really, deploy its diplomatic resources to help Nigeria in African continent, help us with the Security Council, help us with so many strategic things. But I don't see France doing that. And secondly, is that France itself is really not growing in global power. It's actually, in some sense, a diminishing power. It has been for some years. And so, strategically, France is not going to lift you into the big playing club. France also has a lot of issues to deal with in terms of its crisis. So, what I think that it's nice to engage, and I think the president actually needs it more than Nigeria. This is a president that some people have created impression that is isolated because of the stories, how he emerged. So he needs some blusters, and the diplomatic foray, this kind of optics received by world president, helps him politically. So if I'm one of his handlers, I will push him to do a lot of more of this. But the point is that the reverse is, or kind of the cost aspect is that you're losing executive attention. Again, it's possible for the president to be doing these trips if he had a strong government on ground, strong administration, strong aides, strong chief of staff, and these guys are running real, governance. So we might not say, okay, the president is probably using this to help himself in terms of image. But the cost, what the opposition party may be worried is that the crisis on ground are not getting better, they are worsening. And the executive attention required, it's like the president finishes one trip and then he jumps into another one. I mean, he just came back and then he had to move to this France visit. So who knows when he comes back, goes elsewhere. I think, look, Obasanjo did a lot of globetrotting. Maybe some people say Nigeria image got, burnished a bit under him. But looking back as well, people can say that not much of those trips were not strategic, did not get the results. So now Tinubu is on the same, path. And so the question then is, and again, you see the team around them. You see, sometimes they're not taking notes. Sometimes the team does not suggest that, look, you've planned this trip well, you have strategic engagements, and those engagements continue or tie into a bigger development agenda. And so when I hear we signed MOU on XYZ, the question is, after that, is there a follow-up? Do you have a structured engagement post-visit that results really And that depends on pre-visit planning and the fact that these deals are actually strategic to your economic and social, policies, and they are substantial and not just, MOUs. MOUs, they sound all the time, but the results don't show, the value. I think a third world country like ours, a country struggling with development, a country struggling with incoherence and confusion, needs more of executives who probably blank off from the world for some time. America first, Nigeria first, and resolve the crisis of development internally. And then with this reconfigured Nigeria, you gain credibility. Mike, look at this. Many countries will go to some other African countries, not come to Nigeria. They may go to Angola, they may go to Rwanda. These countries are in global rating ahead of us. What that therefore means that we need to, and the reason why they're ahead of us is not because we're not showing global presence, attending events. They are better than us because the governance indicators show that they're doing a better job. So if we get a handle on the governance crisis, and indicators improve, we look at the rating on rule of law, on development, on economic growth, this is heading up. It will create a new dynamics that Nigeria becomes once more the poster child of African resurgence. For now, things are not adding up.
Let's talk about, because I do know that President Macron, has a bit of connection with Nigeria. During his visit in 2018, and we also know that he was in Nigeria some years ago for his internship and all of that. But let's talk about, do you think, France views Nigeria, as a critical partner in rebuilding its influence on the continent? And now that he's gradually, they are gradually, I think, France is gradually losing, her influence in the sub-Sahel, especially in the front. Can Nigeria become an entry point to this continent? That's one. Then secondly, before I let you go, what key sectors, what do we have to trade off? Since they really do not have that, political influence or economic influence to influence Nigeria, what can we trade off?
First, let's have the last. France has always been here. Scale Motors, Michelin, different entities. So France has not been missing actually, although there have been a lot of withdrawal. And again, technology, science and tech, they are good. Some aspect of agriculture. But again, I think the visit highlighted a lot of cultural, the cultural aspect was very great with the Pidgin English tweet and all that. I think there's something wrong in highlighting
and for the first time, we saw, President Macron speaking English, tweeted in Pidgin English.
That was great. For cultural value, it was a great meeting, a great moment. But again, of course, Macron has some roots with us. But again, the point is that Macron himself is a diminishing political leader. That's another thing. So the next election might throw up a different dynamics. For now, I think France will get more from Nigeria. So far, it looks like they need Nigeria to stay in the West African region. Again, the fear here is whether they're also using Nigeria as a staging post for anything that might not be nasty to this country. That's part of the rumor going on. But I think that areas we should focus on is human capital is important. They have established administrative systems and capacity building projects. I was once in 2009 a guest of the French government, or what they call emerging global leaders, and I went to their Academy for Education. I went to those institutions, so they can help us in that area. They can also help with technology, like I said, and then Prince signed some agreement. My point is that, look, these agreements and engagements should be driven by rigorous assessment of competitive advantage and pathways to development. So it's not like, okay, that's a big French company that does X, and then we say, oh, let's sign up so that we show it up and say, 400 billion, sign with that company. It must be that signature, that company and its project and capability ties in with a strategic vision, uniform, coherent vision of development. So we shouldn't be, look, we go to a place, say, who is big here? They say, oh, there's a guy who does whiskey. And we say, okay, there's a whiskey plant in Omwa here. So we say, okay, governor signs, that's the point I'm making. You always find something to sign in any part of the world. You always find a company in any part. But the question is, do these engagements proceed from a strategic vision of where we want to go, what we want to do, and then are they necessary to help us get there? Or is it part of feel good? Presidents, sometimes part of the presidency is to check where they've gone and how well they're treated. I mean, it's also fun. It's a fun ride for many presidents. But the reality is that We keep pushing that these visits should be more strategic.
All right.
And cost benefit, cost benefit analysis should be on the benefit side and less on the cost.
Dr. Sam Amadi, Rise Analyst and Director of Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Thank you for your insightful analysis as always.
Thank you.